Wow, Karen, you've shared with us that this topic is very close to your heart, and that vulnerability absolutely shows through in your talk. If you'd like to unmute yourself and show your video now, um, before we move into the Q&A session, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Karen Ellenbecker, and was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I've lived here my entire life. I have 3 grown children and 7 grandchildren and 1 great-granddaughter. And we are very involved as a family in our community. This is where we live. We really believe in giving back to our community. And it has just been such a great honor to be part of the TED Talk. And as you know, it was a real struggle for me. It was an up and down, and it forced me, for I think the first time in my life, to actually look at myself and my career and who I am. And it was an absolutely beautiful journey.
Oh, love to hear that. We have a couple of questions prepared by our team, and we're already starting to get in a couple of questions from our audience members. So remember, if you have questions for Karen, send those into the Q&A area. So for our first question for you, Karen, through this process, you had many ideas and stories that didn't end up in the talk that we just saw. Are there one or two things you didn't get to share that those striving to be positive disruptors might benefit from?
Well, one of the things that was a challenge for me was when I was doing the talk, everything seemed so easy, all the disruptions, but there's so much underneath all that. And one of the things that I really want to share is that um, positive disruptions don't always work out the way you think they're going to. And that was something that was really true for me. And so when you think about if you disrupt a marriage, you could end up divorced. If you disrupt your job, you could end up looking for work. And both of those things actually did happen to me. And so we might not always see the results that we want, but the real underlying thing about disruption is that it's not really about winning. It's not about coming out in the end and being attached to a certain outcome. What it's really about is understanding that you can see things that other people can't see, and it's having that courage to speak up and that courage to push forward, even though there are a lot of people who may be discouraging you. And one of the things and the people that I always think about is Martin Luther King, because he's someone who didn't live long enough to see the outcome from the movement that he created. But I really believe that if he was asked today, he would do it all over again, because he really trusted that when you have the courage to change the world, the world really changes around you. And the other thing, I guess, that I would say is to enjoy the journey and to really, um, I didn't, I didn't always do that. And as I look back now, I think that there is a piece that is often missed, and that's the piece of the people who really support you. You can be a disruptor and you can come up with great ideas, but if you're not living by your values, and if people don't really see that you're you're doing what you say that you're going to do, they're not going to follow you. They're not going to support you. And I know that for me, I was so blessed to have so many people in my lives that they really did see things in me that I didn't see. They encouraged me and they followed my dream. And without that, none of this could have ever happened. And I think about my employees and my daughter and my family and my friends who have always been there to lift me up and to help me have that courage to keep on going when things got tough.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I love that. So our second question, it has been a really long time, as we've said, almost 2 years since we began working together. And I know you've experienced many personal changes throughout that time. You've already spoken, and Markia has, to the vulnerability that shows through this talk. What have you learned about yourself throughout this process?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's actually pretty hard to talk about, because when I started doing this, I had heard about it and I decided that I want to do that. And so having this opportunity to really talk about my life was very personal. And as I was working on this TED Talk, it just wasn't coming together. It just wasn't flowing. And I couldn't figure out, I've been on the radio for 30 years. I speak all day. That's what I do for a living. And I couldn't get this to feel natural. And when I was working on talking about my radio show and what was happening, all of a sudden I realized that I was having that same stomach ache and I was feeling, that things just weren't right. And no matter how I kept trying to do this, it wasn't coming together. And so I stopped and I asked myself, why are you doing this TED Talk? Why do you want to do it? And I thought, is it for me or is it for the audience? And I realized that I was doing it for me. And that wasn't the right reason. And I was doing it because I really wanted to feel valued. And I wanted to prove that I was smart enough and I was worthy. And all of a sudden I realized I wasn't walking my own talk because I was doing a talk on letting go. I was doing a talk on trust. And realizing that was kind of in my own way a shock, but it really forced me to work and to look at myself and to realize what I'd accomplished without having an education and without having some of the things that I felt that I needed, and to be successful without that. And it was really about taking that time to appreciate and to accept myself with all the bumps and bruises that I have. And once I did that, it like opened up my life and the talk just flew out of me. And I couldn't wait to do it. I mean, I was so excited about it because it was for the right reasons. And I think that that's an important part when I say don't be attached to the outcome. I didn't realize how attached I was to, again, proving myself. And so the talk opened up my heart and it opened up my ability to appreciate who I am and what I stand for and where I am today.
Oh, well, that's so wonderful to hear that you had such a positive experience throughout this journey. So for our final team question, as younger generations are shifting away from this idea that we have to go to college, I'd love to ask you more about your experience. Did getting your securities license really eliminate the shame you felt for not going to college? And did you ever really get over that shame?
Well, that's an interesting question because that was a young woman who didn't have a whole lot of life experience at that time, who thought just by having a securities license or a big house or a new car was going to eliminate the shame. And obviously, since I was doing the TED Talk and I had to go right back into the shame, that I realized that, I hadn't left it go. But shame is a really tricky thing. And it's all about us making up stories as to how we think that people perceive us and what they expect us to do. And we really have to look at ourselves and we have to let go of those stories. And we have to adapt ourselves to where our life is today. And that is really tricky. I think that so often we do things in our lives that cause us shame. They can be little things, they can be big things. But the important thing is to really just love yourself. I mean, get up in the morning and look in the mirror and say, I like you. I really actually like you. And let go of this idea of what other people expect of us and the stories. I mean, shame is really about the stories that we tell ourselves. And when I think about the idea of college education and where I came from there, my very first job was working in a nursing home. And in the nursing home, I started out working in the laundry, literally doing diapers. And then I worked my way up into the kitchen and then into the physical therapy department. And at the nursing home, I learned to listen. And that is a core value and a cornerstone of my business. Before we advise, we listen. Before we invest, we listen. Before we plan, we listen. And then I also worked in Mamma Mia's right there in Milwaukee. And there I learned to give good service. And I learned again to listen. And I mean, it was always funny. I always got all these tips, and people would say to me, my other coworkers, like, how come you get so many more tips than we do? But, you know, so my education is where you are, where your feet are on the ground. If you look at your life and you look at all the different things that you did, that's where your education comes. It can be from college, it can be living life, but we do need to get educated in some way and listening to the ideas that are right for you and following your heart. Because the most important thing I have discovered is being happy in what you're doing and feeling an amount of joy that going to work is a new adventure every single day. And when I used to teach classes at the school for in high school kids, I would say to kids, how many of you want to, you know, start your own business? Or how many of you want to work for other people? So many people, kids would put their hands up, I'm going to have my own business. But probably maybe one in that whole classroom were able to do that, because we get stuck into doing what we think we should do and maybe not what we really want to do. So follow your dream. And, you know, no one's going to knock on your door. You have to be out there. You have to be in the world and make it the most that you can.
Mhm. Well, thank you, Karen. We do have a couple of questions from audience members. This question is from Tom. All the presenters addressed fear. I love that you said it was a great teacher. How do you teach the younger generation to push through fear?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. You know, one of the things that someone told me is that people, if we're in fear, then we pass that fear on to our children. So I think the first step is for us to let go of our fear that something should be the way we think it should be. You know, I know for myself that my fear comes from often feeling it around me. And you pick up that. So I think the first thing that we have to do is make sure that we're not transferring our fear to the younger generation, the fear that maybe they're not pursuing their life the way we think they should. I remember a client saying to me that he was so upset because his whole life he had worked so that his children could go into his business and take over his company, and none of them wanted to do it. They all had their own ideas. And I think we have to embrace the individuality of each person. And the most important thing, I think, is to teach our children values and to allow them to experiment and to find their own way.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have one other question from Michael. Has the brokerage industry embraced female brokers, or at least made progress in this area? And what advice do you have for young females or women who aspire to be in brokerage?
Oh, that's such a wonderful question, because when I started in the business, there were no females. and now the business has changed so much. It's changed now from giving people to talking with people about their entire lives, not just about their money. And so I think that if you're willing, if you like to engage with people and you like to help people and to problem solve, the most important thing that I can say is to be able to listen and to allow people to tell you what they want, and not to try and tell people what you think they should have and how they should invest their money, to really give people a platform to engage with you. And I think that there are so many more women in the business now, and I'm so blessed to be in the business with my daughter and to be a female-owned business. And now I have a granddaughter that's joined us in the business, which has just been a wonderful opportunity for us as a family. But I think this is an opportunity for people to really be connected to people. And now through this pandemic, we've all really experienced how uncomfortable it was to be disconnected. And here we are through the pandemic now doing Zoom and being able to connect with people in a different way. And I think that's so important for women or for men to really listen to what works for them. And so many people really do want to engage with people, and they want to problem solve, and they want to help people realize their dreams. And I would say, go to different companies like our company and find a program where you can be mentored and talk to different people to find out what is it that you really, really enjoy doing. And I found it just by one of my first career was being an x-ray technician. And I loved it that I could help people, but then they went away. I never saw them again. They left. I love to work with people and know what's happening to them. So I think that it's a wonderful career for both men and women.
Yeah, I love that. I thought we had one more question. Is Jeff Ellenbecker your son?
Yes.
What an amazing journey it has been. And because of growing up and seeing your growth, it has helped me make me the man I am today. So that was very sweet. And I felt the need to share that.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Karen, is there anything else you'd like to share with our attendees, or where they can find more resources related to this topic, or check out some more of your work?
Yes, they can go to ellenbecker.com, to our website, and they can learn more about our company and the types of services that we provide and the opportunities for anyone that might be looking to get into the securities business.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. I put that link in the chat room for everyone to check out on their own. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Karen.
Thank you.